I was the heir to my father's multi-million-dollar company, but in my grief and distraction, I made the mistake of appointing my fiance as acting CEO. He played his role well until he manipulated the board to strip me of my power and nearly erase me from my own legacy. Just when it seemed everything was lost, an unexpected call from one of my father's oldest friends changed everything. For more gripping stories of betrayal, revenge, and justice, don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss what comes next. I was so soaked in my postgraduate program that I nearly missed my lawyer's call. My desk was buried under notes, drafts, and research for my project, and my eyes stung from hours of reading. At first, I almost ignored the buzzing phone. The hour was odd, far later than he usually called, and he almost always sent an email instead. But something in me, an instinct I couldn't name, made me reach for it. When I picked up, I regretted it immediately. Sophia, his voice was taut, sharper than I'd ever heard it. You must make yourself available for an emergency board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. No excuses. I frowned, pressing the phone tighter to my ear. That's why I appointed Daniel as acting CEO. He's been in this company long enough. The board trusts him in my absence. A pause, then his voice cracked like a whip. No, Sophia. Your fiancé, Daniel, can't take this decision. The decision the board is about to make, they need you there. If you're not present, they'll gain full autonomy to act as they see fit. And that includes decisions you may not survive. My heart stuttered. The air in my small apartment felt suddenly thin. I thought of my dad, how he'd handled pressures far greater than I could imagine, and yet still managed to greet every person with a smile that disarmed their worries. He had carried weight I hadn't yet learned to lift, and he'd made it look effortless. I closed my eyes, swallowed hard, and whispered, "I'll be there." After the call, I sat in silence, phone heavy in my hand. A strange, hollow loneliness crept over me, something I hadn't felt in months. Maybe it was a glimpse of what was coming, or maybe it was simply grief rearing its head again. I wished, desperately, that I could turn back time. 8 months ago, my father was still alive. 8 months ago, I could still hear his laugh in the house, still lean on his wisdom, still keep my promise to him fresh on my lips. I'll protect your legacy, Dad. I'll keep it alive. But was I making him proud? Or failing him? I tried calling Daniel. My fiancé. My partner. The one I should be leaning on. But his line went straight to voicemail. I stared at the screen for a long while, my thumb hovering to try again. I missed him. I wanted to talk about my day, the pressure of my project, the sudden storm this meeting had brought. But instead, I brushed it off, shoved the phone aside, and told myself he was just busy. The next morning, I boarded the first flight to California. Exhausted, my mind frayed from the endless nights of research for my postgraduate project, I still forced myself to stay awake. Despite the stress, a strange spark lit in me. I was looking forward to the meeting, not just to face the board, but to see Daniel. To catch his eye across the room and feel that quiet reassurance, the reminder that love could soften even the harshest days. But when I stepped into the company's building, the air shifted. The lobby was quieter than usual. Too quiet. As the elevator doors opened and I stepped onto the executive floor, my heels clicked against the marble in an echo that felt wrong. Something was off. Terribly off. Daniel wasn't there at the door to welcome me, as he usually was whenever I flew in. None of the staff were bustling about. The floor was empty, eerily silent. My pulse quickened. I picked up my pace, each step sharper than the last. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. When I entered the boardroom, every seat was already filled. All eyes turned toward me. Daniel rose quickly, a practiced smile on his face. He stepped forward and hugged me lightly, whispering, "Sorry I didn't return your calls, I've been so busy." I let the words slide, though they stung. Busy? Too busy for me? For this? I took my seat at the head of the table, trying to settle into the gravity of the moment. Then the meeting began. One of the senior members cleared his throat and spoke with an air of finality. "Sophia, The matter on the table is the proposed merger with Vanguard Global Conglomerates. To secure this, we'll need to liquidate 35% of West Haven Holdings. It's an unprecedented opportunity for expansion beyond the United States into Europe and Asia. The words hit me like a slap. Why, I said slowly, my gaze locking on Daniel, am I hearing about this for the first time here? Daniel, we're supposed to be a team. I should never have to learn about something of this magnitude in front of everyone. I'm requesting we adjourn this meeting until I've consulted with another investment team to determine if this merger is actually the best option for us. The room went still. Then Warren, one of the more aggressive board members, shot to his feet, his face dark with contempt. That's exactly what I've been saying. She's not fit to run this company. She doesn't understand urgency. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and she wants to stall? No. We need to move now. My chest tightened, but before I could respond, voices rose around the table. To my shock, the entire board nodded in agreement, with Warren, not me. Daniel spoke then, his tone calm, reassuring. Sophia, this isn't about undermining you. The idea is simple. West Haven Holdings gets a global reach. With this merger, we'll be unstoppable. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a demand disguised as strategy. My lawyer's warning echoed in my mind, and then I remembered the company bylaws. A clause buried deep in the guidelines for board governance. If the board reached unanimous agreement on a matter, they could override the CEO's decision. All they needed from me was a signature. Just one signature to seal my father's legacy away. I felt trapped. Cornered. Every pair of eyes in the room bore down on me, expectant, insistent. My father's voice whispered in my head, never rush a decision. Never let anyone strong-arm you. But they did. My hand trembled as I signed the document. The ink bled into the paper like a wound. I told myself it was for the best. That maybe I was being too cautious. That my father would understand. But as I left that room, I knew I'd made a mistake. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. It was another board member, his voice low and apologetic. Every board member has chosen to exercise their equity rights, Sophia. It's all happening very quickly. My heart dropped. I didn't understand. Not until I made a frantic call to Daniel. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. And then it dawned on me. Daniel. The undisclosed financier who had quietly bought up shares through proxies, who had positioned himself just beyond suspicion, it was him. He was the majority owner now. He'd played me. Played all of us. I verified it that night. Document after document, tracing the equity transfers until I saw his name woven through the shell companies. It was Daniel. Always Daniel. The betrayal was suffocating. My chest ached as though a knife had twisted there and refused to leave. My father had trusted me to guard his legacy. And in my blindness, I'd handed it to a man who never once intended to protect it. The final blow came days later. Every board member voted me out. Out of the board. Out of the decision-making process. Out of my father's company. No seat. No vote. No voice. I confronted Daniel in his office, fury trembling through my veins. He didn't look surprised to see me. He leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting with cruel satisfaction. You really thought you could run this company? His voice was mocking, laced with poison. You're too naive, Sophia. Not cut out for business. You're a fool. I never loved you. I knew time would make you trust me with everything, and now you have. The words broke me. Not just the betrayal of losing my father's company. Not just the board's betrayal. But his. The man I loved. The man I trusted with my heart, my father's legacy, my future. And as I stood there, hollow and trembling, I realized he had taken everything. Everything. When I entered the boardroom, the weight in the air nearly suffocated me. Every chair was already filled, every pair of eyes trained on me with a sharpness I hadn't felt before. The silence was unnerving. They weren't just waiting for me, they were judging me. Daniel rose the moment I stepped in, his smile warm and carefully rehearsed. He leaned in, his arms circling me in a quick embrace. "Sophia," he murmured against my ear, "sorry for not returning your calls. I've been swamped." Swamped? The word echoed in my chest. Swamped, but not enough to orchestrate a meeting behind my back. Swamped, but too busy to even check in with me, his fiancée, the one who trusted him with her father's empire. I said nothing, forcing myself to walk past him and sit down at the head of the table. No sooner had I settled in than one of the senior board members cleared his throat, his tone heavy with finality. "Sophia, we've convened this meeting to discuss a critical decision. There's a merger proposal on the table with Vanguard Global Conglomerates. To secure it, we'll need to liquidate 35% of West Haven Holdings. This merger, if approved, will expand us beyond the United States into Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." My jaw clenched. The words hit me like a cold wave. A merger? 35% of my father's company sold? I turned to Daniel, my voice low but sharp. "Why am I hearing about this now?" "Daniel, we're supposed to be a team. I should never be blindsided like this. If this merger is as important as you all claim, then I want us to adjourn this meeting. I'll need to consult with another investment team before we even consider something so drastic. We need to know if this is truly the best path for West Haven." The air shifted. Warren, one of the most outspoken directors, shot to his feet. His chair screeched backward, his face red with irritation. "This is exactly what I've been warning the rest of you about," he barked. "She's not fit to lead. She has no vision. This is a rare chance, and she wants to drag her feet? We can't afford hesitation. Not now. Not with this on the line." His words cut through me. My stomach twisted as murmurs rippled across the table. Heads nodded. They weren't nodding with me, they were nodding with him. Daniel seized the moment. He spread his hands in a gesture of calm, his tone smooth and coaxing. "Sophia, no one is trying to corner you. This isn't about undermining you. This is about securing West Haven's global reach. With this merger, we'll dominate markets in ways your father only dreamed of. Don't you see? This is about legacy." Legacy. The word stung like a blade. My father's face flashed in my mind, his hand on my shoulder as he told me to protect what he built. But here I was, trapped in a room full of wolves, my own fiancé leading the hunt. Then the bylaws came rushing back to me. The clause I'd skimmed too quickly years ago. The clause that now wrapped around my throat like a noose. If the board reached unanimous agreement, they could override the CEO's decision. My role was ceremonial at that point. The only thing they needed from me was a signature to make it official. My pen trembled in my hand as I signed. The paper seemed to bleed beneath the ink, swallowing my name whole. Every eye in the room lit with satisfaction, and yet I felt only dread. I told myself it was for the best. That maybe I was just being cautious. That perhaps my father would have wanted me to embrace bold moves like this. But deep down, I knew I'd just opened a door that could never be shut. 2 weeks later, the phone call came. "Every board member is exercising their equity," the voice on the line said carefully, almost apologetically. "Their shares are shifting. Fast." I shot up from my desk, my project notes scattering across the floor. "What do you mean exercising their equity?" "Why no?" The line went quiet for a moment, and then he added, "You need to look into it yourself." My hands shook as I ended the call. I dialed Daniel immediately. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. The sick realization crept over me like poison. My chest tightened. My pulse hammered. I knew. Somehow I knew. It was Daniel. The undisclosed financier buying the shares. The one orchestrating the equity shifts. The one no one had identified because he had hidden himself behind shell companies, proxies, layers of deceit. I spent the night digging through files, tracing transfers, following the money trail that wound through banks and accounts. And then I saw it. His name, buried but unmistakable, linked to everything. Daniel. The man I loved. The man I trusted with my heart, with my father's empire, with my future. It was him all along. Days later, the board gathered once more. The announcement was brief, almost casual. Sophia, they said, you no longer hold majority stake. The new majority owner has requested your removal from the board. The vote is unanimous. It was done. I was out. Stripped of my title, my voice, my father's company, everything. I confronted Daniel in his office, the betrayal choking me like smoke. He didn't even flinch when I stormed in. He leaned back in his chair, smugness dripping from every inch of him. His eyes gleamed with victory. You really thought you could handle this, Sophia? His voice was low, mocking. You're too naive. Too emotional. You were never cut out for business. My fists clenched. You used me. You lied to me. He chuckled, the sound cold and cruel. Lied? No, Sophia. I played the game and I won. You handed me the company yourself. You trusted me with everything. That was your first mistake. His smile widened, sharp and poisonous. And as for love? He paused, his words like venom. I never loved you. Not for a second. You were a tool. A stepping stone. And you, my dear, were foolish enough to believe otherwise. The room spun. My knees felt weak, my throat burned with rage and grief. I had lost everything. My father's company. My power. My pride. And worst of all, I had lost it to the man I once called the love of my life. The night after Daniel spat those words in his office, I sat in my apartment staring at the ceiling. The city lights flickered through my curtains, but all I saw was darkness. Rage kept me awake, but so did shame. My father had built West Haven from nothing, and in less than a year, I had given it all away to a man who saw me as nothing more than a pawn. That was when the phone rang. Sophia. The voice was gravelly, weathered with age, yet commanding enough to silence my spiraling thoughts. I knew that voice instantly. Robert Callahan, my father's oldest friend, a man who'd served as his confidant during the early, brutal years of the company. Robert? My throat cracked. Why are you calling me? He didn't waste time with sympathy. Because I heard what happened. And because your father would never forgive me if I stood by and let you drown. Tears blurred my vision. It's over, Robert. The board voted me out. Daniel owns everything now. I don't even. No, Robert cut me off, his tone sharp. You think it's over because you're playing by their rules. Your father never played by the rules, Sophia. He bent them, broke them, and rebuilt them to his advantage. That's why he won. And if you want to win, you'll have to learn the same. I swallowed hard. What are you saying? I'm saying Daniel is sloppy. Too eager. Too arrogant. Men like him always leave cracks. All you need to do is find one and drive a wedge into it until the whole facade crumbles. That was the beginning. Robert introduced me to a circle of people who owed my father favors, people with influence, resources, and grudges of their own. Lawyers who had drafted contracts Daniel had barely read, bankers who understood the shadow trails of his shell companies, and former employees Daniel had discarded like trash once he secured control. Piece by piece, I learned the truth. Daniel hadn't just bought the board's loyalty. He had borrowed aggressively, using the company's assets as collateral. He was drowning in hidden debt, hiding it behind inflated projections and falsified reports. If exposed, not only would the merger collapse, but Daniel himself would face charges of fraud. Robert leaned back one evening as we sat in his study, sipping whiskey. All you need is proof. And once you have it, you don't go to the police. You go to the board. They'll devour him themselves. Loyalty only lasts as long as profit. That was when I realized revenge wasn't about striking first. It was about waiting until the knife would cut deepest. I re-enrolled in my father's legacy program, an initiative for graduates who wanted to merge academia with corporate strategy. Everyone thought I had given up on business, but in reality, it gave me access to networks Daniel underestimated. Through quiet allies, I began leaking whispers to the press, discrepancies in West Haven's accounts, subtle doubts about the Vanguard merger. Investors grew nervous. Analysts started asking questions. Meanwhile, I posed as if I was rebuilding my life elsewhere, smiling on social media, attending networking events, even posting photos with a new research project. Daniel, arrogant as ever, believed I was out of the picture. He didn't notice I was circling closer. The board meeting that was supposed to finalize the merger was packed. Reporters camped outside, investors buzzed with anticipation, and Daniel, dressed in his sharpest suit, stood like a king about to be crowned. That was when Robert and I walked in. The room fell silent. Daniel's smirk faltered. "Sophia, what are you doing here?" I laid a stack of files on the table, each one a dagger. "I'm here because my father's company deserves better than a thief who sells it off piece by piece." The files contained everything: hidden debts, falsified valuations, offshore transfers tied directly to Daniel. Robert's contacts had authenticated every document. The board members flipped through the pages, their faces paling. Murmurs turned into accusations. Daniel stammered, tried to dismiss it as lies, but the evidence was overwhelming. "You put us all at risk," one director hissed. "You jeopardized this company for your personal gain." Within minutes, the board voted. Not only was the merger dissolved, but Daniel was stripped of his position and handed over to the authorities for investigation. His empire collapsed in real time, the smug confidence drained from his face as security escorted him out. I didn't smile. Not yet. Weeks later, I visited him. The man who once declared he never loved me sat in a stark, cold cell. His suit replaced by an orange jumpsuit, his arrogance replaced by a hollow, bitter stare. He looked up when I entered. "You think you've won?" His voice cracked, lacking its old venom. I leaned in, my tone calm but lethal. "This isn't about winning, Daniel. This is about justice. My father trusted me to protect his legacy. You thought you could steal it from me, but in the end, you only destroyed yourself." For the first time since my father's death, I felt a strange sense of peace. Not joy, not triumph, just the quiet certainty that I had kept my promise. Months later, the board reinstated me, not out of sentiment, but because I had proven myself. I wasn't the naive girl who signed away her power. I was Sophia Westhaven, daughter of a man who built an empire with his bare hands, and woman enough to reclaim it from the man who betrayed her. And every time I walked through the glass doors of Westhaven Holdings, I remembered Robert's words. Men like Daniel always leave cracks. The key is knowing when to strike. I struck when it mattered most. And I made sure he would never rise again. If you enjoyed this video, like, share your thoughts in the comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.